Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Welcome back. Happy Friday. How you doing? We're closing off the week. You're joining us on the replay. A big hello to you as well. Thanks for tuning in. It's always wonderful to have you with us. Let's start and tell you how the market closed. It's been a really good Friday. Let's just put it that way. Wow, what a financial Friday. The Dow closed up 360 points today. The NASDAQ up 304 and the S&P closed up 61 points. We certainly needed those numbers quite a bit. U.S. stocks jumped today, led by technology shares and reopening trades. As you remember, the earlier part of this week was pretty bad in terms of lots of losses, lots of pullbacks. However, some financial analysts claim that this week's roller coaster correction was actually much needed and necessary, saying that there needs to be corrections into the summer because these are important to be meaningful enough to eliminate some of the extreme sort of that intermediate term overbought market condition that we've been seeing. And people are saying, you know what, some of these investors are just over optimistic. So having a pullback, having a correction now and then is certainly healthy for the long-term financial markets. Agree or disagree? Would love to hear your take on that. Well, let's talk about what also did well today. Those of you, I know many of you are invested in technology, right? Many of my clients actually work at technology firms in the entertainment space as well. So this is an area that many of you have exposure to and are comfortable with perhaps long-term. So let's talk about who did well. Facebook jumped over 3.5% today. Tesla also up 3%. Google, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Netflix all did quite well. Travel also saw some big gains as the CDC announced yesterday that fully vaccinated Americans could go mask-free to more places, whether it be indoors as well as outdoors. Now, for those of you who heard the news, I'm curious to see, because there's a lot of news and trendy discussion today on Twitter about whether or not you would start to go more mask-free. You know, we've seen a lot of people saying, yay, this is awesome. Thank you, CDC. I feel like empowered. I can go mask-free. But there's a lot of Americans that are saying, wait a minute, hold up. What about people who weren't vaccinated and choose to not wear a mask? And if I don't wear a mask, then I'd be exposed to them. So there's a lot of back and forth online. I'm curious to see your take on that. If you have an opinion, definitely put that in comments so I can see where you're joining us from. It's great to see all of you. I see a lot of my friends right now on Twitter Live, on Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot. We're streaming each and every day to you. So the other things that we're seeing is United Airlines and American Airlines, in fact, both up over 5% today. Carnival Norwegian Cruises also up 8%. Royal Caribbean advanced also 7%. So definitely a lot of interest and optimism today after yesterday's CDC announcement. Travel, at least from an investor standpoint, seemed to, have quite a bit of a positive day today. But the question is, will this continue? And what will happen next week? Well, earnings season has for many names been stronger than expected, and some analysts continue to believe that this bull market still has plenty of legs and that investors should take advantage of any dips. And if you remember, if you tuned in earlier this week, you heard me talk about the importance of taking advantage of dips. When things drop, if you're invested for long term, you're nicely diversified, you're looking for opportunities in the names that you feel confident with long term, perhaps you're working with a financial professional, you want to take advantage of dips. In fact, I did that when the market was down earlier this week. I added to my kids' college savings plan, right? Those are the things you want to consistently do. And on the flip side as well, perhaps you are living off your retirement or your investments and you need cash flow, then periodically taking profits to be able to have that cash flow is also very important. So make sure that you really stay mindful of how you're invested, but more importantly, what your long-term financial goals look like. So What are we doing here on Monday? I'm telling you what we're doing on Monday. Monday is, if some of you might have already forgotten, but if you've been tuning in to Level Up, I hope you know, because on Monday is the deadline for filing your taxes. Oh, right. The deadline is Monday. That's right. So there's a few days left now for individuals to file their 2020 tax returns without risking a penalty from the IRS. And I think we can all agree that we don't want to get in trouble with the IRS. This year, the deadline for tax returns is Monday, May 17th. As you remember, in March, the IRS had pushed back this date already for individual returns due to the coronavirus pandemic, giving you and I an extra month to file. I believe actually in the state of Texas, I believe they have even more time to file. But some last minute tax tips from my tax preparation friends are this. I want to share these with you. Number one, if you haven't done this already, even if you've already filed your taxes, you actually still have the opportunity to do this if you haven't already, and you can. And that is to contribute to a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, or if you're one of the few people who can't decide on which way to go, you technically could possibly, if your income fits the profile, contribute to both. You can also make a deductible health savings account, HSA contribution. You can also potentially deduct your state and local sales tax. Of course, this is something you'll want to talk to your accountant about. You can also add up your health insurance premiums and medical expenses. And again, provide this to your tax professional. If you're filing it yourself, you can probably input this on your paperwork as well. And for those of you who are my friends who file with TurboTax as well, they also have a lot of areas that can input this data for you. You also want to take advantage of any COVID-19 tax returns for those of you who are small business owners. This is something to keep in mind as well. Now, don't forget, those of you who are working from home, if you are self-employed, you could potentially write off the portion of your home or rental that you're using for business purposes. Now, as a reminder though, if you're a W-2 employee, unfortunately, no such luck for you. You have to be self-employed in order to take advantage of a potential deduction there. The other thing is, don't forget, you still have an opportunity to file an extension. If you're not yet ready to file your taxes on Monday, even though it's been extended for you, there's no harm in simply taking a simple and penalty-free time to file for an extension until October 15th. But don't get too excited. It's really important to understand that IRS still will require you to pay at least your estimated tax bill by this May 17th. So it doesn't mean you just don't pay and you don't file. You still have to pay some money, or else you could pay interest on what you owe down the road. So very important. The other thing is, if you haven't done so already, it's actually not too late. You actually still could hire some help. So for those of you who maybe you're like, Winnie, where do I start? And maybe you're like, I've always wanted to use TurboTax, send me a direct message. I might be able to get you some help and might be able to get you a code for TurboTax, for your 2020 tax filing. But don't wait. If this is something that might be helpful, definitely reach out. And for next year, remember to prepare. Really important. Okay, so, this year you may have waited too long and stretched yourself out. Don't stress yourself too much. Just know that if you got to do it, you got to do it. Make sure you do it right. Don't speed through the process. Take your time. Make sure that you file your taxes accurately and carefully and get the help that you need. Now, if you're done filing your taxes, woohoo, you might be so excited. I'm so happy for you. Don't put all your documents away though. And this is really important because before you move on, I want you to consider completing your financial first aid kit. As some of you have heard, Michelle Fox at CNBC and I actually collaborated on an article about the importance of putting together a financial first aid kit, which then led me to creating this entire website page on the financial first aid kit on what, I would advise my clients and myself to put in a kit. So you can actually jump on this website. We'll make sure the link is in comments there for you. It's free. Just go on there. You can print it out, download whatever you need to do. and you can build your own financial first aid kit. This is important because these are the documents that I think this is just a starting point. You can always add more documents to this that are important to you that perhaps weren't included on the list. But this is sort of the core documents I would advise you to keep in one place safely, right? You want to keep this in a file somewhere secure, as well as an encrypted digital file. I also recommend that you keep a copy not only with maybe your financial professional, maybe an attorney, but also maybe a loved one or family member or friend that you trust that's not in your same neighborhood, not in your same state. Because just in case you ever need the documents and a natural disaster occurs, you're going to be able to get those documents, your tax returns, like your living trust, copies of your credit card, and your passport, all these things that are really important. So make sure you do that. That's information that's here for you. I see Vicky here, my friend. It's so wonderful to see you. I see Joshua here. This is something that I did for you. This is something that was so important when my dad suddenly needed to go in the hospital. It really was something that I was passionate about, and I wanted to share that with you. So definitely take me up on it and go and pull that data for yourself, okay? But today is Friday, and Fridays are always super special because Fridays mean that we answer your questions live on the show, and you did not disappoint. We got plenty of questions this week. In fact, I've been doing meetings. I actually did a meeting with an employee that came from NBC just earlier today. A lot of people coming in, asking questions, looking for advice. So here are some of your questions. We picked 4 out of the group. Now, do know that you can continue to send us more questions. We love getting your questions. So send them in. We'll answer them on the show. Every Friday is when we answer your questions on the show. So all you need to do is put them into comments or send a direct message to me, or actually just go to our show website, which is levelupwithwinnie.com, and we will go ahead and collect your questions there as well. So here's the first one. Let's see what we've got. All right. It says, "Hi, Winnie. My wife and I are considering relocating to a more reasonably placed place to live. Okay. Instead of New York City, where we currently are. I love New York City. I miss New York City. We're renting right now, but we're also looking at buying someplace less expensive. Do you have any advice for making a smart financial move here?" Okay, I love this. Great question. Actually, we're hearing a lot of people say this, looking to move to different locations, especially now that more employers seem to be more open about remote work as well. Now, I've heard this time and time again. In fact, I had a conversation just earlier today with another client with the same concern. So you might be thinking, well, I don't need to be living in New York City, right? It's so expensive. The rent's crazy high. Can I move to somewhere less expensive? The answer is really, it depends. It depends like where you're moving to, what those factors are, what those expenses are going to look like. So before deciding on what neighborhood you'll be moving to, what I would advise you to do is to, a personal balance sheet evaluation. How much do I have incoming as income? How much are my expenses? And how much can I afford in terms of rent or mortgage payment? And once you know that number, then reverse that, right? Then you can look at based on different neighborhoods that you would consider. Maybe you want to move, like one of my clients wants to move closer to loved ones, right? Family members. And is the real estate doable in that area? Can she rent or can he rent at that price? Can I buy a home at that price? And once you figure those out and you can match them together, then you'll have a better understanding of whether or not that makes sense for you. The other thing I would recommend is if this is an area that you're not familiar with, right? Maybe you've seen it online, you have friends that live there, but you haven't lived there yourself for an extended period of time, then I would actually recommend that you consider renting over purchasing a home, even though interest rates are at historical low levels. Because sometimes we know once we move into a neighborhood, we might find out that we love our neighbors or we absolutely despise our neighbors, or we really love where we're at. But if we were just maybe one city over, we'd be closer to the school that we want our kids in, or, the doctor's office or our work or whatnot. So make sure that where you eventually buy at is a place you can see yourself being there for at least 10 plus years, right? And if you can't, then you might make the decision of just renting, testing out, making sure you're really, really happy with your decision before making that next move. And then from there, I would suggest then, doing your research, talking to multiple mortgage specialists. This has always paid off for me. Don't just go to someone that you know who does mortgages, or one person. I actually recommend shopping around. I have consistently done that. I've been fortunate because I have a very trusted mortgage specialist who has always helped me underprice the competition. But if you don't, this is an opportunity for you to do so. Because if you're going to buy a home, 30 plus, it could be 30 years, right, that you'll be paying this mortgage. Make sure that you're in the right mortgage. And if you're renting, same thing. Take your time. Look at different options. Make sure that the situation you're getting yourself into is the best one. Don't lock yourself into a long-term lease until you're sure this is where you want to be. In fact, right now, because of the pandemic, I think you're going to find a lot of rentals available for much shorter amounts of terms, right? So that gives you some flexibility too. So you're not feeling like it's an all or none thing. Maybe you can rent month to month, maybe for 6 months, just to test out the neighborhood. Make sure you're happy. Great question. Thanks so much for asking. Let's go to the next one. All right. Great question. All right, Winnie, everyone is talking about work-life balance. I just want better life balance. After this pandemic, dealing with stress, I'm thinking of just plain old retiring. I'm still in my early 50s, but I just want to live off what I have. I have $350,000 in 401k, no debt, no dependents. What do you think? Can I do it? Okay, so great question. Now, many of you may have been thinking this. I've been talking to a lot of people who have been saying the same thing. Like, I just feel like I'm so burnt out, right? I want to reduce my stress, but I'm looking at my expenses. Maybe I just need to reduce my expenses somewhere. Okay, so great question. I've actually worked with a lot of clients who have retired early. One of the things that we need to do first off is to calculate what that means in terms of retirement for you, right? I have one client, for example, when she retired, she decided to live in a beautiful trailer home community near the ocean. But it was obviously housing was much more affordable than my other clients who decided to move and buy a 3,000 square feet home in the middle of Arizona. And so what retirement looks to you, we need to calculate that. So what I would suggest is to, check out a budget worksheet, calculate how much you spend each and every month. And do you envision retirement to be just as comfortable as you are now, more comfortable, a little bit less comfortable? We got to figure out what that number is. And then based on what you have in savings, which includes your 401k and checking savings and other assets, how long will your money last? And of course, you're going to have to factor in Social Security. Hopefully you have something like a pension or something else that could help with that as well. Once you know that, then you can actually answer whether or not you can retire early. So great question. Go ahead and keep on working on that. If you have questions on that and you need more details, I would highly suggest making a meeting with a financial advisor or professional. If you want to reach out to me, definitely do so, and I'll be happy to chat with you one-on-one. So great question. All right, next question. Let's see what we got. Okay, Winnie, my dad just passed away. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. It's been really hard on me emotionally, but there are so many decisions that I need to make and bills and such that I need to be on top of. Are there people that I can go for help on stuff like this? Help. Okay. So I'm so sorry to hear that. My dad's been, he had a really bad accident. So I can understand it's very overwhelming. And especially when you're not sure where everything is, you need to get clarity. Well, first off, you have to take time to grieve. But the good news is there's people to help you through this process, because we know that everyone's timeline is different. Some of us need more time and more help than others. If you feel like you're overwhelmed, the good news is there are people out there that can help you. I would suggest you start off with first looking and seeing if your dad had any financial professionals in their life, like a financial advisor, perhaps, that was helping manage money, maybe even a banker, someone who knows his history. And if the answer is no, then what you want to do is, talk to his accountant, if he had one, go through his files, go through the computer, find out what there is. And then, because whoever you enlist to help you, and they will tell you there are definitely people like an accountant. I think in many cases, accountant or bookkeeper will be someone that you could go to. Your financial advisor might be able to step in as well. I mean, I know our team has helped with many families that have gone through struggles like this, and figure out who can help you during this time. The good news is there are people. Not only that, it could actually be someone that you know. It could be someone who's not a professional, but who's someone like a family member who is also good with numbers and good with just planning and organizing everything. This is a time to look for help of someone that can come in and make your life a little easier. So hang in there. If you have any other questions like that, definitely reach out to me offline. I'll see what I can do to help you as much as I can. Okay. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for asking that question. All right. We're going to go to the next one here. And I believe this is our last question. Okay. It says, Winnie, I saw those crazy pictures online of people bagging gas. Is that even real? But in all seriousness, I've heard you talk about inflation and I'm worried my money isn't going to be worth much later. Should I be stocking away on stuff for the future? What do I do to make sure my money lasts? Okay, great question. This is such a big question because this is when we're talking about inflation. And so you remember during the pandemic, people were stressing out, buying toilet paper, looking for yeast, looking to buy flour. Like it was a crazy time. And because of what's happened recently, you also saw pictures. I saw them online as well. You look like people are rushing to fill up their gas tanks, right? Even getting these containers out to buy gas for. But as you saw, President Biden just spoke out yesterday, or this week, I know, saying that don't stress that, things are going to get back to normal by probably Monday. So don't go overboard and buy excess gas. Well, I would say this is, a lot of things are starting to increase in value. So inflation is definitely real. We're seeing that with prices such as oil, as well as lumber, as well as even just like, condiments and ketchup and even chicken has increased in price. But that being said, you can't actually just, you possibly could, but I think I wouldn't recommend like going crazy and buying all these things because a lot of things also have, certain expiration dates in them. You might instead try to get the money that you currently have to be earning a higher rate. Typically, we use a 2.5% to 3% inflation rate, meaning that we would like to see your money long-term average out to earn at least 2.5% to 3% to keep up with the inflation prices of goods, right? We know that postage stamps have gone up significantly over time. We know how the difference of a price of a hamburger was when you were a kid versus what it is today. So inflation is exactly that. So how do we plan for that? Well, the best thing to do is take a look at every dollar that you have. Is it working as hard as it could for you, right? Perhaps a lot of your money is in the bank, earning like close to 0%. It's not doing so much for you because as we know, inflation is now going to push that so that your money is actually losing value. First thing you want to do is take a look and see if you have any credit card debt, consumer debt. Make sure to pay that off as soon as possible. Because if you do that, then you're making money on your money because otherwise you'd be paying interest on your credit card debt. The other thing you want to consider doing this is if you're concerned about short-term inflation, obviously you can buy maybe a little bit extra toilet paper for 2 months. I wouldn't go overboard here. But what you want to do is think about your money as your storage pool of funds, right? Perhaps if you're very conservative, you're very nervous, maybe take 10% of what you have in checking and savings and looking to increase the yield on that. Maybe putting it in a balanced fund or diversified mutual fund just to give it a little bit potential growth in terms of dividend growth, stock growth. Or if you're really conservative, maybe you just want a laddered bond portfolio or CDs. That will give you higher interest rates in most cases than just sitting in cash. However, right now the rates are pretty low, so pretty much not that much better. But there are things that you can do. So with that in mind, I would suggest, especially if you have a considerable amount of savings, right? You've got good, at least $10,000 plus in savings that you can hold on long term, then I would suggest you reach out to a financial advisor. Take a look at savingpie.com. That'd be my suggestion. Take a look at that. Really easy. It's an all online platform. Cost is really reasonable. Do something to get a portion of your money working a little harder for you at all times. So you still have liquidity, you still have your emergency fund, but also when you average out, portions of your money that's diversified, invested versus money that's relatively liquid with lower rates of return, you average out with a little bit higher return than where you sit today. And hopefully that way you can outpace inflation. Okay, so thank you so much, my friends, for watching, supporting our program, and please take a moment to share this show. And as a reminder, you can find full episodes of Level Up with Winnie Sun on NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, and Roku. So be well. I can't wait to see you again on Monday. Have a great weekend.